Good afternoon, everyone. So before I start my speech, I would like all of you to do a personality test. This is the quickest personality test in the world. So don't panic, just follow the instructions.
Welcome to the world's quickest personality test. What I'd like you to do is hold out your hands in front of you, make certain they're level, and then close your eyes. So don't just sit there, actually do it. Hands out, and now close your eyes. Don't lose my voice in the darkness. Now imagine there's a helium balloon attached to the fingers of your right hand. So it's gently pulling your right hand up into the air. At the same time, imagine a pile of books on your left hand. The books are pushing down on your left hand and pushing it towards the floor. The balloon is pulling the right hand up, the books pushing the left hand down. Now enjoy any images that float into your mind, but still remember that your hands are being pushed and pulled. Excellent. Now open up your eyes. So what does it mean? Well, if your hands are far apart, then you tend to have a good imagination. You're sensitive, intuitive, and you easily become absorbed in books and films. If your hands are level, you're more down to earth. You're more logical, you're more analytical, and you enjoy puzzles and games. And if you saw an image of a puppy, well, you just tend to be a little bit suspicious.
Okay, so how many of you have actually saw the puppy? Raise your hand if you did. Well, it's a little bit less than I expected. But, so, as in the video I've said, if you saw the image of a puppy, that means you're a little bit suspicious. But for me, when I first take this test, I kept my eyes open, too. And my teacher smiled at me and said, "You're not the one to follow these instructions blindly." That moment stuck with me, because only carefully designed robots will follow the instructions solely. That made me think, are we really making our choices, or we're just running pre-written codes? So, that's what I'm going to talk about today. For me, I hated of being somewhat of control or forced blending with the people around me. Growing up in those cultural expectations, there were always voices that forced me to follow the traditional paths. Well, I always hate to be tagged as obedient, hardworking, and traditional. But this is not how I feel, but how I live and how I think. This pull between reality and self have always existed. So, here's what I'm going to talk about today. About the resisting the pressure to fit in. About the courage to prevent ourselves from becoming the final product, a robot. Or in other words, about how to be back in beta. Growing up, I felt like a duplicate living in Plato's allegory of the cave. A prisoner chained to the column that will force misinformation projected on the wall. Those shadows are the information that you can never check if it's truly an unbiased fact or not. So, those shadows were everywhere in my life. For example, my relatives may call me tomboy because I would always prefer tree climbing over sitting silently, drawing, and doing other stuff, like what other girls do. It isn't really I was trying to rebel, but it's just how I am, regardless of whatever gender I was given. But somewhere along the way, I got a message that who I wasn't really acceptable. Another example, whenever I enter the volleyball court, there will always be random concern from male participants. I don't really know if they believe that female athletes are less skillful than them, or they believe that I'm gonna get injured someday. But that's what I get. And that moment stuck with me too. Because why, in your mind, a girl like me would never be played as well as them? But in middle school, I tried to blend in with other people because I felt I was different. And I smoothed my edges, stopped playing sports as often. But does that really make me any more happier? Actually, no. Because I'm executing the commands that I don't agree with. So that confusion between what I wanted and what I'm supposed to want led me to a moment of real choice, of whether I can continue to choose to blend in, or I can reclaim the parts that I lost. But it isn't this instant epiphany, but rather, I started choosing me. I don't really have to be concerned with whatever I do will please anyone else, or I don't need to be forced them to be friends with me. But rather, it's not about who is above who, but everyone has their own choice and their own personality. I can choose to dive 140 meters below sea level, Or I can choose to climb at 5,500 meters above the sea level to the mountains. Well, also, I can enjoy the competition that brought endorphin, that makes me happier. Everyone has their own ways of life. Stereotypes are just the criticisms of becoming a distinct you. And that's what I'm coming to realize. It's not an advice that being different is a flaw, but actually it's a clue. A clue that makes you what you are. That tension followed me into academics. Everywhere I turn, there were expectations. Do this exam, pre-studying, and do what others do. The environment pertaining to either grade 7th graders, AC IELTS was a score of 7.5, which I don't even believe I can do it now. And or turning into 8th graders, competing in extracurricular scientific competitions that made actually for high schoolers. That made me think, are we still kids or just early stage resumes? The environment is turning for each of us, both teachers and students. We're no longer being viewed as a distinct individual, but rather we're just a number ticking and jumping on Excel forms. Everything is not about learning anymore, but rather about compare, measure, and analyze. What we care now is not about how would you study, what do you like, what's your interest, but rather about how many Cambridge and Oxford offers we can have, how many top US university offers we can have. No one's ever asked what they really wanted, but rather asking, what did you do today? Did you finish your homework? Well, that format of future exists for me too. And honestly, it's exhausting. Because what is the point of all these efforts if I don't even know what I truly wanted? Why should I just follow the shadows on the wall, but rather than choosing my own way? So then, I feel the chains that chain me to those columns start to fracture. And eventually, I can turn around and see the fire, the light, the path behind me. But unfortunately, when I turned, it almost blinded me. I was confused of what to study. Everyone seemed to have an opinion for me, because I don't really know what I should do, so it's basically like a million matchmakers telling an overage girl which one is the best to marry. I was confused all along, like a blind man pushing around, facing obstacles and challenges. My parents say engineering, my teacher said biochemistry. Everyone has their own opinion. But tracing it back my earliest memory, I was about to learn math and physics. So when I was very young, my dad tried to train me, as like those public school students does, to do those tricky questions. Do the draft work, do not use calculators, but I can't just follow them, because I fell asleep when he's teaching me tricky questions. I always use calculators because I don't know how to calculate. So eventually give up. The reason is I am too good at arguing at him, but rather than doing the questions. So he gave up. Now, when I get into middle school, I started to get in touch with biochemistry. Why? Because I don't like math and physics, and my language scores are average. Well, I don't say I hate them, but they're the best match. So I got on with it. It wasn't really until I stumbled into anthropology and law that something really clicked. Because at that moment, I feel like I am debating, investigating, and trying. What is this field? A lot of you are going to ask. Maybe many of you haven't even heard the term anthropology. It's basically the learning of humankind. And in that area, there's a discipline that intersects biology, chemistry, and also law, philosophy, and law. So, that is what I really wanted. Because when I tried to step into this arena, I find that you can actually do those biochemistry experiments, like stable isotope analysis, lipid remaining analysis, and even more, you can do 3D modeling with drones. That really interested me, and I felt like that is what I really wanted. So I tell my parents, I'm gonna study archaeology. Their reaction, of course, like most parents, they were very surprised, and they think like you're not gonna get a very stable future if you do that because you don't really earn a lot. Well, I get it, but those are the challenges and obstacles I have to face in order to step out of this cave. So, I get what they wanted from me. That was the safest option. But what if there's no longer a safe option? According to a philosopher called David Hume, who proposed the theory of induction theory, he suggested that what happened in the past may not happen in the future. For example, if you saw the sun rise every day, we're assuming that it will rise tomorrow. But do you really know, or can you prove it will rise tomorrow? You'll probably not. Just like in academics, AI has solved a 10-year superbug mystery that troubled human scientists for 10 years. Any database subjects can be overtaken by artificial intelligence. So what's the function of us now? Imagine this. If you did do what your parents wanted and you choose the safest option, you graduated from a decent university and you get a decent degree, and then the moment you graduated, boom, COVID hits. Something what you can do is that you can stuck at home working an 8-hour job you hate. Or even worse, you can't find a job, and the only thing that you can cling to is your degree, like a straw. How regretful would you be at that time? And how ironic. The safest option becomes the abyss that crushes you. And even more, if you learn something you love, you will be less miserable even if you fail, because you enjoy your academic journey. Or even more, what you get is what you give. So, by order to find your love and passion, you will be less likely to fail. But how do you find your love and passion? For me, that was when I went to an adventure in Kazakhstan this summer about archaeology and anthropology. It wasn't really an easy challenge. Whenever we go, whenever we sit, there are always flies around you. And also, you don't have a place for shower, to sleep, you don't have air conditioning, and you have to dig up those bones under 40 degrees below the sun. But what really fascinated me is that you can actually study paleoanthropology, like studying those human bones that were hundreds or 2 years ago. You can touch those bones and you can actually feel it. Those were literally just humans that exist in the past. Or even more, you can imagine that you're standing on top of the wall of an ancient city. And 1,000 years ago, maybe another person like you was standing there, and they may have the same feel. You're connecting the past with the present. So this is what I got. Although those challenges maybe seem unnecessary, I should do more exams, I should do more competitions. But whenever I graduate from school, when I enter the society, all these experiences are going to become my ability and my think tank. So I choose passion over predictability. And this is how I stand into the light. By choosing what I really wanted, and by overcoming all those challenges. Now, here's what I've come to realize. It's still a realization that's unfolding, but not advice. There's no single blueprint to a meaningful life. We have our confusions, our quirks, our questions. And the world's gonna shape us into what they wanted. The culture wanted and shape us into the robot. But remember, all those concerns, those questions, those thoughts are what made us really human. So now, I ask you what the Plato's freed prisoner did. To strap to the chains and go to the past and see into the light. Although it might hurt if you see into the light when you step out of it. But congratulations, you've become a distinct you. So in the end, I want to say, don't be a robot, be human. Thank you.